How's it going, everybody? And welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. Uh-oh. You don't have audio over here. You don't have good audio. Oi, 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 oi. So, this is the show where you can ask me anything about politics, and I will give you a sincere, honest answer, as objective as a human being can manage, as accurate as a human being can manage. So, if you got any questions about politics, and I will do my best. What's up, JP? Good to see you again. Alrighty. I know that politics can be really weird when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. And it's particularly weird these days with all of the misinformation and propaganda that's out there. So, if you got any questions about politics, just put them in the chat and I'll do my best to give you a great answer. Everybody is welcome here. If you are a MAGA person, if you're an independent person, if you're a Democrat, progressive, lefty, liberal, libertarian, whatever, everybody is welcome here so long as you are asking questions in good faith. Any questions in good faith will be given good faith answers. In return, that is my promise to you. So I'm not going to call you stupid if you're MAGA. I'm not going to say you're uninformed or gullible or uneducated. And in exchange, I hope that you don't say the same things to me or call me a cuck or whatever. So yeah, we're all here to try to figure out what's going on and how to try to figure out what a better country looks like, because a better country is possible. We just have to elect people who will actually fucking do it. So let's all get on board with that project. And if you got a question about how we do that, or you got a question about politics in general, just put them in the chat and we can get into it. There's no such thing as a dumb question. So if there are things that you are worried about asking your friends because you're worried they will think that you're uninformed or uneducated or a little slow, then you don't got to worry about that here, because there's no judgments here. This is a judgment-free zone. If you got a question that you've always wanted to ask, but you're worried that it would make you seem like a MAGA person, you can ask it here. There's no judgments whatsoever. If you've always wanted to ask a question, but you're afraid that your friends would think that you were some sort of a cuck libtard because of the question, you don't got to worry about that here. You can just ask the question, and there'll be no roasting or debating or making fun of you whatsoever. There's no judgments here. This is a judgment-free zone, so long as you are asking your faith, as long as you're asking your question in good faith. Error, that is not a good faith question, and I gotta be honest, my patience with you is growing real thin, so you can either be a better participant or you can leave. Alrighty, any questions at all, you just throw them in the chat and I will do my best to give you a great answer. Everybody's welcome, Republican, Democrat, Independent, anything in between or on the edges, so long as you're asking in good faith. I will answer in good faith. Gabe, that is not a question. But do you want to know something more specifically about that? Let me know. Alrighty. So yeah, politics is really weird these days. Things are moving at lightning speed. There's a lot of misinformation out there and propaganda. So where can you go to ask all of your questions about what's going on? Trevor says, what is something Trump has done right in your eyes? So Trevor, two things about that question. Number one is there are so many things that Donald Trump has done wrong, both because he is incompetent and corrupt and just generally a malicious human being. I find it weird that in order to have, credibility in the political space, you have to admit when he does things right. I don't think it's necessary if somebody's stabbing me to have to admit that they have nice eyes or some shit like that. So yeah, do I think getting rid of the penny is a good idea? Absolutely. But, I don't think that makes up for, or is even close to making up for, the fucking mountain of shit that he is forcing us all to deal with. Alrighty, Death says, why are Democrats so worthless? Why do Democrats hate America? Why do we hate Democrats? So I don't know why you hate Democrats, Death, but Democrats aren't worthless and they don't hate America. Alex says, another liberal delusionist. That's not a question, Alex, so ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Narak says, what do you know about Argentina and Robert Citrone and Paul Singer? I know a little bit about Argentina. I don't know who those two people are. I think it's really weird that Donald Trump is giving 40 billion of our taxpayer dollars to Argentina. just because a bunch of his billionaire buddies are heavily invested in the economy in Argentina, and he's buddies with the dude in Argentina. Argentina is undercutting us, our soybean farmers and our cattle farmers, our cattle ranchers, and Donald Trump is just throwing them all under the bus. What's for why? We should all be really fucking pissed off about that. Steve says, "What are we being forced to deal with?" Well, ICE, for example, is like disappearing people who are legal residents or citizens or Native Americans, veterans. We are being forced to suffer under increased cost of living because of tariffs. We are being forced to live under rapidly increasing healthcare costs because they are refusing to continue to renew the Affordable Care Act subsidies. We are being forced to live with rapidly accelerating electricity costs because they are letting AI companies, they're forcing Americans to share the electric bills with AI companies. Yeah, it's fucking psychotic, Steve. Narak says, "One owns the debt of Argentina." Well, I'm sure that person is a buddy of Donald Trump and is asking him to bail him out so that he doesn't lose his investment. Rug Savant says, "Hey, what's up? We make custom rugs for influencers for the brand." I am not the guy for that. I do politics and comedy, and I don't think any of that is about rugs. Damian Justice says, "Uniparty. I don't buy the uniparty theory one bit. There are massively different consequences for Americans depending on who is in charge. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which is only possible because Democrats were in charge, and there are women today who are dead because of abortion bans that were only possible because Republicans are in charge. So yeah, the politicians are different, the platforms are different, the outcomes are different. It is not a real thing." Danny is terrible. Great to see you again. Says, "What do you think about these emails from the man with the plane?" Sorry if you answered that already. So I'm really curious about what information is going to come to light through that. I know we've already seen a little bit, but there's like a lot of emails that have been uncovered. So I guess we just kind of have to wait and see. But yeah, for people that have been paying attention to Trump's relationship with this guy for a long time, none of this is news. Like there was a woman who was suing Donald Trump because she claimed that he SA'd her when she was 13 years old, and all of this tracks with all of the other things that we know about these guys. So why it's a surprise to some people is news to me. All right, let me get over to some of these Twitch comments. All right, so error, you're starting out poorly with the beginning of your first question here. And calling him Obama again, that's strike two. Also, a few weeks ago, you stated the Southern strategy was based on Democrats changing their philosophy, when in fact it was based on states' rights and rule of law. Can you admit that you are wrong as usual? JP, why don't you go ahead and block error because he has failed the test. JP says, "Is anyone going to care about the island emails released? Do we need to see it all laid out with video, or would that proof not matter?" So JP, the fellow with the island, is baffling to me because, number one, this is all information that people like me have known about for a really long time, and it's just like, well, what the fuck was everybody else waiting for? But the other thing is, there's so much evidence of Trump's corruption and incompetence and stupidity, self-dealing, barbarism, just fucking, it's bananas. Why is this the one place where both elected Republicans and people in the Republican base seem to be on board with the rest of us in reality? I don't get it. Like, if you're willing to turn a blind eye to concentration camps and Trump's cryptocurrency and a fucking laundry list of other crimes, January 6th, the fake elector schemes, stealing top secret documents from the government, all of that is fine. But this trickling of evidence suggesting that Donald Trump was actively involved with this fella, that, for some reason, is what's getting Lauren Boebert to stand up on principle and fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene. What? I'm happy that it's happening. Don't get me wrong, but fucking, why is this special? I don't fucking get it. Alrighty, JP. All right, did that one already. Puff says the other stuff was beneficial for Republicans. I mean, maybe, the Republicans who had to hide in their offices because they were worried about getting murked on January 6th, they fucking fell in line pretty quickly after that. You know, like I don't think that's yeah, I don't think that's the only thing, you know. Okay, David says, do we really think any truth about Trump will come out of his involvement? Yeah, probably, because again, there seems to be something special about this issue. I don't understand what it is. I'm happy that it's there, but you know, I will just have to kind of wait and see. This could be for me like a Lucy with the football situation, where I'm like, it really seems like this one's gonna go, and then once it gets to the fucking final stage, all of the fucking Republicans who are calling for this then just like turn course and are like, haha, we knew it was fake all along, or some shit like that. I don't know. Let's see here. This, all right, no. To the dude who just called me a Shabos goy, the answer is no, and also I um I fucked your mom. Okay, Danny says we're only 600 likes. Oh, that's really, I appreciate you encouraging people to do that. T Wing says, what's your view on LGBTQ rights? I am for them. Death says, is the Civil War going to fix America? No, civil wars are like terrible. Like we should be trying to work against there being a civil war. Average Joe, great to see you again, says, doesn't Caroline Levitt, and I see what you did there, Trump did nothing wrong response regarding the fellow with the island email sound familiar to the response when Tom Holman took the FBI money? I mean, it sounds familiar for anything that Donald Trump gets accused of doing with with those fucking mountains of evidence to support it, you know? User a bunch of numbers says, so the emails are nuts. It is nuts that the shit that's in those emails. Pretty damning in my opinion. Death says, don't you think if there was anything on Trump, Hillary, Biden, please don't say shit like that, Death. Come on, man. Like, you're asking questions in good faith. I forgave you for your shit at the very top of the stream. Can we not say shit like that, man? So wouldn't they have used it already is what Death is asking. And the answer is that the Democratic Party tried to get this information released 3 times in the past. Once in 2019, once in 2020, and once in 2023. And Republicans filibustered it. Also, the FBI was in the hands of a fellow named Christopher Wray, who was a Republican who was appointed by Donald Trump. So if you want to know why that information didn't come out during, the Biden administration, you'll have to ask Republican Christopher Wray or the Republicans who filibustered it. As far as Hillary was never the president, so she was never going to be able to do it as well. Dane says, I think it's very obvious that both sides are in the files, or people who support both sides are. So Dane, yeah, probably. I have no idea who is in the files. I am confident that, certain elected presidents are potentially, implicated in there, being very careful so that I can't be accused of spreading misinformation here. But yeah, anybody who is in there, whether they are Republican or Democrat, they should face legal consequences and potentially be, not like killed, but like taken out of government is what I'm saying. Jail or impeachment or whatever, man. Death says, didn't Hillary make up the Russia thing? No, the Russia thing was real. And the fact that people think that was like unsubstantiated is bananas to me. Like, if you read the Mueller report, Death, you will see that there were very substantive connections between the Trump campaign and, and the government of Russia, an adversarial nation. And not only that, but there was solid evidence that the Trump campaign destroyed evidence of their connections, which, is a crime in and of itself. So yeah, why would you destroy evidence if you are innocent? And you're also guilty of destroying evidence. So they should go to jail for that. S.E. Morgan says, anyone that's involved in the island guy should go to prison. 100%. Fatty says, it was not real. Are you out of your mind? No, I read the Mueller report, Fatty. Did you read the Mueller report? Death says, bought and paid for by the DNC. No. Did you read the Mueller report, Death? Because I did. Fatty says, yeah, that's why Hillary got rid of her laptop. You're ridiculous. I mean, why are we talking about Hillary's laptop? That has nothing to do with the Mueller report. Lid says, you know nothing if you believe Russia interfered. But they did. That's what the Mueller report found out. Like, it was definitive. There are people in jail because Russia interfered in our elections, Jen Shen says, is the vote today to release the files? That I do not know. Odud says, we used to be pharaohs and kings and shit. Who's we? Because I don't know if I ever was. BB Fan says, did someone indicate that Trump threatening any Republican voting in favor of releasing the files? So yeah, he did have apparently a meeting with Lauren Boebert, potentially other people, to try to pressure them to not vote for the discharge petition. It appears to not be effective because the discharge petition, I think, was passed. I think Mike Johnson said that the House vote on releasing the files is going to happen next week, if I remember that correctly. And so, yeah, we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But again, we all need to be encouraging all of these Republicans who are, for some fucking reason, deciding to stand on principle now and have courage now, that we need to encourage them and tell them to keep on going. This is not when we throw shade at Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is when we encourage her. Alrighty, Kitchen Noodle says, I'm starting to believe that Trump was more and more involved as the info was released. I think that is an accurate belief that you were having there. Okay, John Selfridge, good to see you again, says, do you think J.D. Vance is preparing for his ascension? Seems like he's being awfully quiet about the latest events, and he would know how bad Trump's health is. Oh, 100%. Like, if you look at everything that J.D. Vance has done while he has been vice president, he is trying to set himself up as the heir apparent for the MAGA crowd. And I don't think he's being successful, but that is 100% what he's trying to do. So I don't know. I also don't know if he's looking at this as like a Trump's not going to survive the term, or if he's just thinking about this like, 2028, or if Trump succeeds in his plan to remain president after 2028, after, when he passes away or when he eventually leaves office. S.E. Morgan says, it may not be Trump's health that gets him out of office. That is accurate. Arsenal says, will JD move on Trump? No. Part of inheriting the MAGA base is never throwing Trump under the bus. Dan Blackbird says, also, I doubt Hillary Clinton can even turn on a laptop without asking her grandchildren for help. That is accurate. Will Butler says, his plan, LOL. What exactly are you laughing at, Will Butler? I'm confused. Peggy Smith says, whoa, plan to stay? Yes, 100%. Trump's plan is to try to stay president until he is dead, even if that means staying president for 3 terms, 4 terms, 5 terms, whatever, however long it takes, however long he lives. That is his goal. That is his plan. He might not succeed, but that is what he wants. That is what he is currently trying to do. Will Butler says, Trump's plan to stay president, LOL. I mean, you can LOL all you want, Will Butler, but the dude who did January 6th is not planning on leaving. The reason why he's joking about a 3rd term, the reason why he's making Trump 2028 hats is because it is his plan. The reason why he's flirting with things like the Insurrection Act and the declaring martial law is because he wants to cancel elections so that he can stay president. Like, it's obvious to anybody that's paying attention. Oh, Dud says, JD is the tech oligarch's puppet. Trump was just the booster rocket to get him in the door. That is accurate. Danny is terrible says, Trump wants to be a dictator and a king. It's real. That is also accurate. User a bunch of numbers says, he's talking about starting a war to remain president. That is also accurate. We got a bunch of fact tellers in my chat right now. Arsenal says, will the files lead to his downfall? So this is me being totally honest and vulnerable with you guys. I have no fucking idea. Because if you had asked me at the beginning of the Trump term, if all of the files shit came to light, if that was going to change anything, I would have said absolutely not. I would have told you that every single Republican in the House and the Senate would do everything they possibly could to block, obfuscate, destroy all of this information that could be harmful to Trump. And the fact that people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are signing on to this and are part of a coalition of people that are trying to get this information out there is blowing my fucking mind. So where we go from here, I have no fucking clue. But I'm glad that this is the path that we are on. And I think we need to be continuing to encourage these politicians to do the right thing, because the Trump administration and his billionaire buddies are going to be putting pressure on those elected Republicans to not be part of that coalition. Alrighty. Okay. MMCA says he will not try to stay president. Heard of constitutional amendments? I have, MMCA, but that doesn't stop Donald Trump. I don't know if you're aware, but he signed an executive order to get rid of birthright citizenship, which is also in the Constitution. And so he doesn't really give a shit about that constitutional amendment. Why would he give a shit about the constitutional amendment saying that he can only serve for 2 terms as president. What's up, Triska? Good to see you again. Really Bad Kitty says, blood in the water. If you if you say so, I am admitting I'm in the fucking dark here. I'm like fucking Sarah Connor at the end of Terminator 2. Like the future is a dark road, which was once so clear to me. Now I am walking into ambiguity and obscurity the same way as everybody else is, Alrighty. Danny is terrible says, no, we have to do the work in the midterms, flip our seats, get rid of the Dems not doing the work. Yes, 100% that is also part of it. Danny is terrible. Let's see here. Follow if you love Trump. I feel like we got a block coming. Says, dang, Trump is using the Democrats' playbook. LOL, go Trump. That's not a question. Follow if you love Trump. I'm just going to go ahead and block you right now. I don't really think that somebody with that screen name is going to be here in good faith. Okay. Social Justice says they did say it was unconstitutional and under repeats and under repeal, and I think what you're saying is that they're not going to repeal it or something like that. Unable to repeal, maybe is what you're saying, Social Justice. Yes, that is true, but they say everything. They say the right thing and they say the wrong thing, and then they do whatever the fuck they want. So yeah, I do not view them acknowledging the unconstitutionality of it as evidence that they are not going to try. User a bunch of numbers says, are you a leftist too? I guess it depends on how you define a leftist. I call myself a progressive Democrat. Brian says, I don't understand, how is he not being stopped by the checks if he's breaking the Constitution? So where everything except for the fellow with the island is involved is concerned, the Republican Party is allowing Donald Trump to skirt responsibility for breaking the Constitution. And the Supreme Court is also allowing him to skirt responsibility for breaking the Constitution because they are in his pocket, because he sat 3 of them, Does that answer your question, Brian Barretta? The Republican Party has proven time and time again that they are for party over country, and they are for Trump over all. And so they are allowing him to have a cryptocurrency. They are allowing ICE to operate, without any kind of oversight, and, a host of other constitutional and law violations because they are either on board with Trump's project or they're scared of him. Ivan says, I wonder if Elon is on the list too. It kind of, there's been some evidence that came out that suggested that he was part of there as well. User a bunch of numbers says, do you watch any conservative or right-wing creators? I don't, and it's for a very specific reason, user. It's because data has shown that conservative media is way less accurate than every other kind of media that you can find. Something like 20% accurate, depending on which source, which data, which study you look at. And so I don't really see any value to, the checking out conservative or right-wing creators, except to try to see like whatever lies that they are currently spreading. But I'm not in an echo chamber. I get my information from a bunch of different reliable sources, whether they are centrist or progressive or independent or foreign. That's not an echo chamber. If I'm just deciding to ignore the one piece of media that has been proven to be inaccurate, then that's not an echo chamber. Brian Barretta says, yeah, but isn't the Supreme Court the only true interpretation of the Constitution? I suppose, an argument could be made that it is, but I guess it's part of the delegation of powers within the 3 branches of government. But the Supreme Court is not infallible, obviously. They are subject to the same, motivating factors of every other human being, depending on how corrupt they are. And the Supreme Court justices that Donald Trump sat were picked very specifically for this purpose, to interpret the law in a way that is beneficial to Trump and the Republican Party. So yeah, they have no credibility at this point. Brian Barbitta, let me know what you think about that. Tall Bruce says, who's the face of the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party is a big tent, and it has many faces. Richard says, can Gavin Newsom actually win the presidency with his record in California? I think so. He's a well-spoken dude. Tall, handsome, white man. Seems to check a lot of boxes. He's flawed, but if he wins the primary, then hell yeah, absolutely, I'm gonna do everything I can to get that guy elected. Ooh, ready. Yimon says, come on, Jamon says, do you think Biden dropping out so late was strategic to not allow other Democrats to have a chance? No, opposite. I think it was a massive blunder. It was a giant fuck up. It was Biden having the ego of thinking that he could be president even as he was becoming more and more enfeebled as time went on. There was no strategy there. It was just fucking idiocy and ego. It was a massive fuck up, and I think it is largely responsible for Democrats doing poorly in the 2024 election. Let's see here. Okay. Kitten Joyer says, what is the political reason for a group to be kicked out of 109 countries? I'm not really sure what you're referring to, Kitten Joyer. Brian Barretta says, I'm a freshman studying political science. Love conversations like this, still an independent for right now. Oh, that's great, Brian. You are so welcome here, my guy. And if anything that I say doesn't vibe with you, if you ever want to dig into some of the things I'm saying or challenge me on things, so long as you're doing it in good faith, you are 100% welcome here. And I'm happy to challenge my priors given substantive evidence. Danny is terrible says, thoughts on AOC running for the president? I'd support her way over Gavin. I love AOC. I think it just depends on what she wants to do. I think that a lot of people are hoping she'll run for president, and a lot of people are hoping that she will try to take Chuck Schumer's Senate seat. And I think that she would be great at both of those. I think that the voting base is really worried about nominating another woman of color because they are worried that America is still too racist and misogynistic to elect a woman president, particularly one who's so young. And so if I was, her strategist, if I was working in her administration, I would say go for the fucking Senate seat. It is a fucking slam dunk. And that will be, you building up more of your, resume. I guess the counter argument for that would be what America really wants right now is change. And they want people who are not fully enmeshed in the political establishment. And so, an argument could be made that her swinging for the fences instead of going for the Senate seat would be the move. But, that's all just, that's all. No one can say for certain. People can only have opinions on what the move is. All right, going back over to YouTube and Twitch. John Abbott says, you see Fetterman is in the hospital after falling and hit his head earlier. I did, and I wish him well. I hope that when he hit his head, he goes back to being a fucking regular dude instead of a fucking psychopath. Average Joe says, is it pessimistic to feel like nothing will happen to Trump even if there's video evidence, based on the fact that his supporters have refused to hold him accountable for anything so far? I don't think it's pessimistic. I think that it is a totally reasonable thing to think that the fellow with the island will not have any effect on Donald Trump. I think it's a little too overly pessimistic to think that he won't suffer any legal consequences for the things that he's done. Maybe he'll die before that, but assuming that he leaves office and is alive, and we are able to get Democrats in office, then there's a good chance that he will suffer legal consequences for the crimes that he has done. Where the fellow with the island is concerned is a little bit different, where I could never have predicted that the Republican Party was going to fucking stand on principle on this thing. And so I understand being pessimistic about if those Republicans are going to continue being courageous and voting the right way. And I cannot tell you if that is, reasonable or not reasonable, because all of this is fucking Greek to me, man. I don't understand why any of this is happening, but I'm glad, User a whole bunch of numbers says, why didn't the Dems release anything on Epstein for 4 years? They tried in 2019, in 2020, and in 2023. They were either blocked by Republicans or the head of the FBI, a Republican named Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Trump. User a whole bunch of numbers. Let me know what you think about that. Or are you just here to try to ask gotcha questions? User a bunch of numbers. Let me know. Not showing my pretty faces. I thought some emails from the files were just released. Would they do a drip release strategy, and why? So I actually did look into this because there's a batch of files that the Department of Justice has and various committees have access to that they are trying to find, the votes for legally being able to release.
And then there is other information that's coming from the Epstein estate. And those people are, slowly dripping information out for fucking whatever reason. I have no idea who those people are. But that is the difference between the information that's coming out regarding the birthday letter and the emails versus what everybody in government is currently trying to vote on. User bunch number says, bad faith to say gotcha questions when you're saying ask me anything, broski. Well, it's my live stream. I set the rules. Snafu says, why didn't Biden release the files? He tried again in 2019, 2020, and 23. He was blocked by Republicans and / Christopher Wray, who was the head of the FBI at the time, a Republican who was appointed to his seat by Donald Trump. Brian Barabita says, would you say that the Affordable Care Act is anti-free markets? It's a really good question, Brian. So there are a lot of things about the American economy that are anti-free market. Like, there is no fully free market capitalism anywhere in the world. Basically, everywhere has some sort of government restrictions and regulations. If you want to see what real free market capitalism looks like, you look at things like the Gilded Age. You look at things like the stock market crash. You look at things like Asphalt Jungle by Upton Sinclair. You look at things like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, where when we let markets decide, when we say to a big pile of money, you get to decide how things go in this country, massive fucking disasters happen. And so we put little regulations here and there to try to make things more equitable, to try to increase market competition, to try to destroy monopolies before they happen. To try to make sure that workers are taken care of, to make sure that companies aren't polluting the earth with the chemical runoffs from their factories and shit like that, So while the Affordable Care Act does try to reduce the increase in healthcare costs over time by implementing certain laws and restrictions, but I wouldn't say that the ACA is like, anti-free market capitalism because of those regulations. I would say it is exactly as anti-free market as the rest of the American economy. Donald Trump forcing Intel to give company shares to the American government, so now America is kind of like subsidizing one tech company. That is anti-free market capitalism, the same way that ACA is. Does that answer your question, Brian? Let me know. Triska says, didn't we learn these things in school? Go to college, friends. Accurate. Rosalind says, congrats to you and your wife. Thank you, Rosalind. I appreciate that. Lemmy says, a totally free market is Afghanistan run by warlords. That is accurate. Alrighty. John Abbott says, the benefit of being a pessimist, though, is you can never be disappointed, only vindicated, pleasantly surprised, or impressed. I might be sounding like a hippy-dippy, frou-frou, the energies of the universe kind of person here. But I believe that pessimism, regardless of those advantages, have kind of unconscious, trigger mechanisms that make the bad things happen. And so I encourage people to be optimistic, or at least a realist. Let's see here. John Abbott says, my understanding is that these new emails were released as part of a legal proceeding in the UK. Interesting. Yeah, so it might not have anything to do with the American legal system at all. That is interesting. Brian says, well said, I have mixed thoughts on the Affordable Care Act, but no legislation is perfect. Just need pros over cons. All right, so pros, it makes it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. And that by itself means that there are people alive today who would be dead without it. I don't think that the Affordable Care Act was ever meant to be a perfect piece of legislation. I think it was trying to make things a little bit better and hopefully lead us down the road towards universal health care. Alrighty. User bunch of numbers says, but Jared seems nice, though. I don't mind him. I just wish he'd opened up his view a bit. I'm very open. I base all of my opinions on data, user. If you can give me some data that changes my priors, then I change my priors. There are a bunch of people, regulars to my live streams everywhere, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, who can tell you that they have seen me change based on data that I have gotten. Somebody was here yesterday who I was like, oh, you were the dude who told me about the fellow with the island files is going to have to go to the Senate, and then Donald Trump's going to sign it, and I said I didn't think that was right, but then I looked into it, and you were right, Right, S.E. Morgan says, would you rather have no Affordable Care Act or universal health care? I mean, that's an easy choice. Would I rather have a worse situation than we have now or a better situation than we have now? Universal healthcare, 100%, hands down. Peach Ninja says, no opinion on the going rate of souls? I think I know what you mean by that, but can you clarify? Leslie says, of course, that's the why of the ACA. Wonder what that is. Let's see here. Peach Ninja says, how much did Caroline Levitt get? That's what you're referring to. I mean, everybody in the MAGA team is there because they are a piece of shit who does not mind lying for power, lying for money, lying for influence. It's fucking, yeah, they're disgusting, Fog of War, thank you, man. Is it anniversary or is Jarrett finna be a papa? Jarrett is finna be a papa. We are expecting in early May. Very excited about it. But it is keeping me from being able to do stand-up for over a year, which is annoying, but I'll take it. So long as I have a baby at the end of it. All right, Javion Hunt says, sorry if you answered this already. What's going on with these fellow with the island files today? Are these the files? So there's two different batches of materials. There's what the DOJ has and what the Epstein estate has. And apparently the Epstein estate is releasing some of this material because they're being forced to by lawsuits in the UK. I don't know too much about it. One of my viewers just told me about that. But then there's also a discharge petition to vote on releasing the files that the DOJ currently has. And the discharge petition was passed, which means that a vote is happening. Mike Johnson says he's going to bring that up for a vote next week. And then after the House votes on it, then the Senate will vote on it, etc. All right, Snafu says, Democrats are literally in the same boat of that explanation you just gave. LOL, the irony. I don't believe so, Snafu, but can you clarify? Because I'm not really sure what issue you are specifically referring to. In general, I am pretty hostile to the both sides of the same argument, Snafu, so just letting you know where we are going, where we are starting there. But please let me know what issue it is that you think that Democrats are in the same boat as Republicans. Brian says, thoughts on Trump stating this morning that the Affordable Care Act funded big insurance companies, not individuals. So there is some truth to that, Brian, but it's a tricky piece of rhetoric to try to make it seem like the Affordable Care Act was like written by the insurance companies to make them richer. The fact of the matter is the insurance companies fought tooth and nail against the Affordable Care Act because they make more money by denying care to people for quote unquote pre-existing conditions. The Affordable Care Act exists in the American economy where insurance companies are the barrier between individual citizens and getting health care. And if we had a public option, then that would not be a thing. But exactly one senator vetoed that, Joe Lieberman, fucking, rest in peace, I guess, you fucking asshole. So any legislation that you have that does not have a public option or does not, get us onto Medicare for all is going to involve the insurance companies, which will mean money going to insurance companies. But there's no proposal from the Republican Party to circumvent the insurance companies as middleman for healthcare in this country. They're just pointing out that in order to get from point A to point C, you got to go through point B. You know what I mean? Let's see here. User a bunch of numbers says, are you for universal healthcare? Yes, I am. It is cheaper and better. Let's see here. Gorgeous says 2002 New York Magazine Trump interview. The fellow with the island likes women on the younger side. Trump knew back then. Yes. George is gorgeous. Yes, 100%. This is why people like me are surprised that other people are just learning this information for the first time. We're like, we've been knowing about this, All right, back over to Twitch and YouTube. Ecuadorian baseball pitcher, good to see you again. MAGA said no new wars under their guy, right? Interesting hypocrisy when you look at Venezuela's situation and possible invasion by America. Yeah, I got the notification yesterday or 2 days ago that Venezuela was mobilizing their military. Awfully concerning. Average Joe says, doesn't it feel like Rupert Murdoch and the Heritage Foundation hired witches to combine cognitive dissonance, sunk cost fallacy, false equivalency, and delusion into undetectable brew that was dumped in the country's rural water supply? That's a very interesting theory, Average Joe. I think it's probably just money, though. Like, I think all those things you're talking about, I think it's just money, you know. But I'll definitely keep that in mind. You know, I'm open minded to that. It's the Rocketeer. Good to see you again. Did you see that I made you a mod? It's the Rocketeer. Let me know if that went through or not. Did you see the one rep who is baiting Trump into suing him over slandering him by saying he's in the files so that they have to submit them for discovery? I did not, and but I'm interested in that. Do you know who? Do you know who it is? I would love to look into that. Alrighty, back over to TikTok. Brian says, how do supposed we address fraud within Medicaid and Medicare? So that is an excellent question, Brian, and this is where I think people need to start adjusting the way that they feel about politics and taxes and government programs in general. I heard somebody say this on TikTok, so this is not like me, what do you call it? This is not like me putting these pieces together. This is somebody else that I got this from. User a bunch of numbers says, more government, always more government. User a bunch of numbers. I understand the desire to avoid, you know, additional bureaucracy. But the data is in. Like, we know that universal healthcare would be cheaper and better. So I kind of don't really view the more government argument as being invalidating the way that I'm sure that you probably do. And then user a whole bunch of numbers says, I did my thesis on it, bro. All right, well, I don't know. I don't know why you, in stranger on the internet, think that your thesis is better than all of the other research and data that has come out about this. I don't believe you. You either did bad research or you're lying about this. All right, so let's see here. Back to Brian's question about fraud within Medicare and Medicaid. So the answer to that is this. Imagine three people. One person gets to the airport 5 hours early every time they fly, and they've never missed a flight. One person gets to the airport 2 hours before they fly, and maybe they miss one flight every 5 years. And then the third person gets to the airport 45 minutes before their flight takes off, and they are missing flights constantly. Like, it is way more, it is way more often that they miss flights than that they make flights. So the question is, which of those three people is traveling the most efficiently? And the answer is the person in the middle, the person who only gets there 2 hours beforehand. And yeah, they might miss a flight every now and again, but they are on the net losing less time than the person that gets to the airport 5 hours early every time they fly. That analogy is for fraud in welfare systems. So if you try to catch all fraud in Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, Social Security, SNAP, all of those programs, you end up spending more money and resources than if you had just let that fraud happen. And so this is something that I think America needs to fucking grow up about, which is that sometimes people get things for free. Sometimes people get things for free that you had to pay for. Sometimes people get things that they didn't deserve or didn't work for or didn't qualify for. It's just something that fucking happens. And trying to stop it so much that it happens 0 times is going to cost you personally more money than just letting that happen. If we gave people free houses, then we would be spending less money on that would cost us less money than if we let those people die on the street and they have to constantly be going to the emergency room for care. That's just like one example of that. So yeah, yeah, I understand that it's frustrating to think about somebody getting something for free that you had to work for, but you are probably getting something for free that somebody else had to work for as well. It all kind of comes out in the wash. What do you think about that answer, Brian? And thank you to everybody on TikTok who helped me achieve my gift goal. Thank you so much. Observe Games, good to see you again. So Triska, Myra, and UNX Pais, thank you so much for helping me reach my gift goal. I really, really appreciate it. Now let me set up a new one because I heard that helps you in the algorithm. Okay. All right, Hunter says, what should Trump have done with the money instead of the ballroom? Literally anything else? I don't know. Put it into SNAP. Maybe subsidies for the Affordable Care Act would have been nice. Rich was here says, and let's remember, one of the biggest Medicare fraud cases ever was Senator Rick Scott. That is also very accurate. Thank you, Rich was here. Okay, let's see here. All right. All right, I will get to these Twitch comments in just a second. Let me get back into these TikTok comments here. Brian says, in the summer I visited Capitol Hill. Every office I was in was either D or R. Were educated on issues. It was hard not to agree with their perspective when with them. Yeah, I completely get that, Brian. And I think it's important to recognize that that's part of the reason why they have these jobs, is because they are good at giving you the exact specific details to prove their specific point. And if you read the book for the Persuaders, which I would highly recommend for you, Brian, please join my Discord, because I got great books, poli-sci books that are going to be wonderful for you if you decide to stay on this track and potentially write your thesis on something. But one of the books on my Discord recommendations thread is, I said that weird, is called The Persuaders by Anand Giridharadas. And he said that what makes somebody an independent voter isn't that they want a little bit of Republicans, a little bit of Democrats. It's that they are open to both arguments. They hear the Democrats say, we should have universal health care for this reason, and they go, oh, that's a great idea. And then they hear Republicans say, we should do, the private healthcare market because this. And then they go, oh, that's a good idea too. So yeah, it can be really difficult to sort of like parse through the rhetoric of both sides. But, that's the goal of, self-governance, is trying to, figure out what's accurate data and what programs work and what programs don't, And thank you. I made my goal again. That's so sweet. You guys are really being way too nice. You're causing me to blush over here. So yeah, thank you, Cynthia, Mira, Jewelry with Power, and Triska. Jewelry with Power, did you change your screen name? Didn't you used to be East Meets Westy Bestie? Or did somebody steal your picture? Okay, setting up a new goal, because I heard it's good for the algorithm. Okay. User Need More Coffee says, can we talk about the fellow with the islands files? I don't really have any new information for you. We're going to be going through all those emails. Yeah, I'm shocked and surprised by how much that has broken through. Yeah, we'll just have to see. We will have to see. All right, let's get back over to these TikTok, these Twitch and YouTube comments. Average Joe says, are you concerned that Dem voters generally don't care about Graham Plattner's tattoo, or are you relieved to see that Dem voters are moving away from purity tests by accepting his apology and his explanation? So it is not up to me to decide if his potentially racist, potentially misogynistic comments are something that people can forgive. I am not a woman, I'm not a person of color, and most importantly, I am not a voter in Maine. However, as a Jewish person, I find his explanation for his Schnazi tattoo to be extremely credible. And were I a Maine voter, that would, I would still be supporting him as the candidate. And I do think that in the Democratic Party, we need to get away from, purity tests. I do think that we need to be more open to people who've had diverse life experiences and who've made mistakes and who potentially were, doing stupid things or saying stupid things and have now come around and are better people, The purity element, the purity test element of the Democratic Party is one of the things that people hate about it the most. Okay, let's see here. JP says, if we had universal health care, millions would cancel their insurance. That's why insurance companies are spending money to misinform. That is accurate. Ecuadorian says, so if America invades Latin America, can we say we told MAGA so? You 100% can, Ecuadorian. I give you permission. Okay, the Virginia Steptis says, I don't agree with Trump or the alternative of Trump. What is it about the alternative of Trump that you disagree with, Virginia? Let's see here. East Meets Westy Bessie says, 20 years of wearing that tat can't be overlooked, though, and he never knew. Come on, bro. My personal take on this, East Meets Westy Bestie, is, if he had this tattoo for 20 years, I can 100% imagine how he would not ever know what it meant. Or he figured out what it meant and decided to keep it ironically. And I get a former Marine with PTSD thinking that that is a funny and fine thing to do. And thinking, well, this is embarrassing, but nobody except for people in my immediate circle are going to see this. I will be able to explain it to them, and then they will understand that I am not a Schnazi, and we'll just go on with our lives. It is just, it is just what do you call it? It'll be embarrassing, but it'll also be ironic. And look at an example of how stupid I was when I was a drunk Marine, deployed abroad. And if you don't buy that East meets Westy Bestie, then that's totally fine. I'm not here to tell you that that is something that you have to believe. But as a Jewish person, I find that completely valid. But also, like, neither of our opinions really matter because we don't, live in Maine. Leslie says, ironic shweshika. I mean, that's different, obviously. Like, everybody knows what a shweshika is. So there we go. And I met my goal again. You guys are just being, you guys are going to make me blush. I'm so touched by all of this. Observe Games says, way more likely that he knew what it was the whole time than didn't know. I don't agree with that. Observe Games? I don't agree with that at all. But, unless you're a voter in Maine. All right. Thank you to Jewelry with Power. Thank you for Chris. Thank you for Marah for helping me reach my gift goal once again. I don't think I've ever reached 3 gift goals in one live stream. Let's see here. Can I do that? I cannot do that. All right, I guess we'll just do 20 again, I guess. All right. Sweet. Okay. Let's do 2. East meets Westy Bestie says, giving these people the benefit of the doubt has burned us every time. East meets Westy? I don't think that's true. I think that there are plenty of times that we have given people the benefit of the doubt, and it has worked out. You, Sir Your Coffee says, do you have Cash App or Venmo? I do. But you don't have to go do all that. You can just, I've got a Patreon that you can join, or, you can buy things from my store, stuff like that. The Virginia says, all trying to get rich or create funnels for money. So Virginia, if you look at the things that Republican politicians have done versus the things that Democratic politicians have done, it is clear that there are bad actors on both sides. But on the net, the Democratic Party is way better on this issue. There are way more people in the Democratic Party who we can look at their governing history, we can look at their bank accounts, and we can see you are not here just to get rich. You are here trying to help people. And that is the reason why I am a Democrat, is because I believe in supporting better over worse. Alrighty. Okay. Shork says on his Reddit, he would talk about wanting to eliminate fascists. And that is part of the reason why I found his apology to be accurate. Jamie says, I watched a lot of Iraqi veterans speak on this, and many of them have had the same experience. Yeah, there you go. Another reason why I find that apology to be very valid. Okay, let's see here. Mon says, reason for the $40 billion to Argentina. And Brian, I see your comment there. I want to get to that too. The reason for the $40 billion to Argentina is a couple of things. Number one, Argentina is a libertarian government, and libertarian is kind of like loosely related to the American right wing. And so they want that government to succeed the same way that they want every government that calls themselves communist or socialist to fail, so that they can say right-wing ideology good, left-wing ideology bad. That's number one. Number two is the guy who is in charge of Argentina, I forget if they have a president or prime minister or whatever, that guy kisses Trump's ass nonstop. And so Trump loves that, so he wants to help out that dude a lot. But probably the main reason why we're giving $40 billion to Argentina is because a lot of Donald Trump's billionaire buddies are heavily invested in the economy in Argentina. And if they go bust, then they lose money. And so they are sacrificing taxpayer dollars, American taxpayer dollars, so that Donald Trump's rich buddies' bet on the Argentinian economy will pay off as opposed to be a loss. Brian says, my former high school politics teacher said I'll lean more towards a side as I get through my undergrad. Yeah, potentially. I hope so. I think the more that people know, the more that they recognize the difference between the two political parties, etc., etc. Alrighty, we're almost at an hour, everybody, so get in your final questions. Brian says, as an 18-year-old male, the current stigma of being a liberal is a soft party. What are your thoughts? A lot of the discourse around the Democratic Party, both the elected politicians and the culture of the left, liberals, lefties, progressives, whatever, a lot of that is tainted by an inorganic smear campaign perpetuated by right-wing billionaires. One of the books that I would recommend to you, Brian, is called Dark Money by Jane Mayer, and it will show you how a lot of the things that we think about Democratic politicians, Democratic policies, were literally astroturfed by the Koch brothers and a bunch of their billionaire buddies. And the fact that they knew that what they were doing was sketchy and they had to keep it a secret and they would have these like secret meetings, it's like a literal fucking conspiracy, And I know that I sound like a tin hat person right now, but fucking she brings receipts. So I would definitely check that out. And as far as like, us being labeled a soft party, I think it's funny because, the Republican Party has had so little to offer voters for so long that they decided that cultural identity was going to be the thing that won them voters. They were going to say, we're the party of trucks and beer and football and lifting weights, MMA, all the cool shit, tattoos. Like, we're the party that does the fun shit, and we don't scold you for saying offensive words or making fun of marginalized communities and shit like that. And yeah, it's just it's nonsense. I don't really care. It's like one of those things where it's like, if you go up to a tall person and you tell them you're short, it's not going to bother them because they know it's inaccurate. If you come up to me and you call me a cuck, or you say like my wife has a secret boyfriend that fucks her better, I don't get upset because I'm like, no, she doesn't. Anyways, and I have a joke about this in my stand-up. Are you still here? Are you still here, Brian? Because if you are, I'll tell you the joke that I have in my stand-up about this. Let's see here. Echo Romeo says a Marine buddy of mine tried to have Deathwalker in Arabic tattooed on his leg. Turns out it said man cunt. Well, there we go, guys. A little bit more. All right, so yeah, my joke about this was that Republicans try to make it seem like liberals are like sexless weenies, which is ridiculous because we fuck. Like, Democrats fuck, like they call us cuck soy boys on Twitter, but that's fine because then we log off and we take our feminist dicks and we fuck with them liberally. And I say, why do you think we care so much about abortion and birth control? It's because we fuck, and because we don't use condoms because we're trying to lower our carbon footprint. All right, I don't usually do my stand-up on the live stream, but that just fit in way too well. All right, let's see here. Okay. Average Joe says, about Plattner, I can speak to the military perspective. When I was enlisted, we had yearly training about racist and gang-related tattoos. I never remember seeing or learning about that specific one. Also, drunk 20-year-olds getting spur-of-the-moment tattoos is extremely common in the military. Combine that with the fact that nothing in his Reddit history indicated anything racist makes his explanation seem legitimate to me. Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. Thank you, it's the Rocketeer. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys liked my bit. Okay, T says, did you hear Republicans going to add more abortion restrictions in the continuing resolution that will be coming up? So there are 3 things that I have heard are in the continuing resolution that I still need to dig into a little bit more. One of them is increasing restrictions on garden gummies and garden beverages. And I've done a little bit of research in that now, and I'm not 100% sure about it yet. What it looks like to me, and I could be wrong, but what it looks like is there's a certain classification called Delta 8, which is legal in all 50 states. And it's possible that what's in the continuing resolution makes those more restricted. Again, I feel like if it was going to close down dispensaries in California, it would be bigger news. So that's why I think it probably just has to do with like the Delta 8, Delta 9, varieties. The second one is being able to sue the government for investigating Republican politicians for their involvements in January 6th, which seems credible to me. It seems like, part of the same grift of Trump suing the government for... I think he's suing it for the same thing, maybe, which is basically just, because his government decides to settle those cases, it's basically just Republican politicians stealing taxpayer dollars. That's number 2. And number 3 is the abortion restrictions, and I have not done any research into that yet. I'm a little skeptical of it because it really just seems so out of left field. But I'll dig into it and come back tomorrow. Remind me in a DM and hopefully I will have an answer for you. Rabbi says, do you think if Kamala was elected, something would have been done to address the Palestinian genocide? 100%, without question, absolutely. People forget that Kamala Harris said that she was going to be harder on Israel than Joe Biden was. And people interpreted that at the time, and I interpreted that way myself, as she was going to be a lot harder, but she had to say a little harder so that she did not upset Joe Biden and the political establishment that she needed to rally behind her in the 107 days that she had to mount her campaign. So yeah, without question, it would have been better. Even if we just had Biden's administration and his fucking shitty handling of that situation, it would still be better than what Trump is doing, because what Trump is doing is actively supporting Netanyahu's government. He's asking I forget who, he's asking for Netanyahu to get a pardon for his corruption case. I don't think that we see Netanyahu bombing Iran and all those fucking neighboring countries if we had a Democrat in office, because I think that they were reaching their last straw of like, you can't get away with this shit anymore, Me and many other people believe that last straw should have come way sooner, of course, but it's still better than nothing. Let's see here. The Senut Saratasi says, what do you think about socialists taking over New York? So Mamdani is not taking over New York. He's the mayor. He's not a socialist. He's a democratic socialist. And he is laser focused on bringing more affordability to the people that live in New York. And as a person who lived in New York for 20 years, I say absolutely fucking bravo, my guy. So yours, these nuts are tasty. That makes a lot more sense than whatever I said. Do you buy that these nuts are tasty, or is nothing I say ever going to change your mind or introduce any new information to you? Let me know. Okay, Sir Finn Georgia says they will get whatever they want until the Grapers take over. I don't know what that's in reference to, but I don't know if I 100% agree with that. Rabbi says Trump and Biden have acted identically in practice regarding Islam. That is not true, Rabbi. So there have been demonstrable differences between what Biden did and what Trump did. Number one, Biden stopped sending Israel 2,000-pound bombs. Trump started sending them again. Number two, Biden put sanctions on illegal settlements in the West Bank. Trump canceled those sanctions. Additionally, Trump has been openly advocating for ethnically cleansing Palestine so that he can build a fucking Mar-a-Lago over there. The Biden administration, I think an argument could be made that they would not have been pressured into bombing Iran's nuclear facilities the way that the Trump administration did. That's just a handful of examples that I can think of off the top of the dome. But there are a lot of differences, Rabbi. There are a lot of differences. Okay, Brian says, Mike Johnson said he wasn't happy with suing due to the searching of electronic devices. I mean, I think that's probably rich considering that he still voted for it, right, Brian? I would need to double check that to make sure, but I'm pretty confident that he did vote for it without trying to do anything about it, all right, these nuts are tasty. I appreciate you being open to that. And god damn it, do I love having open, good faith political discussions with people whose names are these nuts are tasty. I love saying, that's a really good question, these nuts are tasty. I guess if I had to talk about the wealth tax or, this nuts are tasty, it is kind of an atrocity what's happening to, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, please stick around. These nuts are tasty. I hope that you are a regular going forward. All right, Rabbi says sanctioning settlements is the same as doing nothing. No, that is not true, Rabbi. It's not enough, Rabbi. And I think that you and I agree on this, that Biden did not do enough by a fucking mile. But still, it makes a difference. It makes a difference, Rabbi. It really does, And we can disagree on that, but I'm pretty confident that it makes a difference. Let's see here. Brian says the provision drew criticism from Republicans as well. Johnson said he was very angry about it. Oh, wow. Well, I'm sure we'll all be fucking sleeping better knowing that he's angry about the thing that he fucking voted for. God damn, that guy fucking sucks. I'm so fucking pissed. All right, everybody, I'm going to start doing my outro. Get your final questions in now. So yeah, thank you everybody for all the comments and everything. Rabbi says, tell the Palestinians that it makes a difference, and you ignored where Biden supplied more weapons. No, I didn't, Rabbi. I gave you 3 examples of how Biden's policies were better. And you want me to talk about the Palestinians? How about the Palestinians that are fucking dead right now that wouldn't have been without 2,000-pound bombs? Tell me about the people whose houses they would still be in if illegal Israeli settlements were not being encouraged by the Trump administration, Rabbi. You know, sorry I got a little heated there, Rabbi. Because we agree, Rabbi, you and I agree about what needs to be done. Like, why do we have to argue about hypotheticals about would Biden have been better, would Kamala Harris have been better, regardless? Like, we agree that this needs to stop. We agree that the American government needs to stop sending money and weapons to countries that are doing genocide and war crimes. We agree that Netanyahu is doing atrocities and has got to go. So let's focus on that, man. Let's have a coalition, you and me, you know? Like, let's not get into the fucking weeds. Like, it's not fun. It doesn't make it seem like this is a party that people want to be about when we're fucking nitpicking about shit like this, you know, man? Come on, man. Rabbi says we have to argue because people like you are setting back Democrats. You know, Rabbi, I'm starting to think that you're full of shit. I'm starting to think that you are literally just here to make the conversation worse, to make people think that this is what the Democratic Party is, you know? So unless you prove me wrong, I'm going to have to get rid of you, my guy, because I'm making all of these overtures to you to try to reach some sort of consensus and coalition and figure out a path forward. And instead, you're just calling me like a fucking monster for telling you facts, you know? Like, come on, man. Like, let's be kosher, Rabbi. Let's be kosher. Come on, man. I can say that because my last name is Berenstein. Brian says that was dropped in at the last minute. I didn't appreciate that. Again, man. Come on. Come on, man. Yeah, Johnson. Yeah. Oh my God. I feel so bad for you, man. Like, well, what could you have done, Speaker of the House? What could you have done? Bit Nevo says if you had to put a health percentage on American democracy, what would it be at? I don't know, 15%, maybe something like that. Maybe a little bit higher. We did really good. Good last week in the elections, and so it is proving that America's democracy is stronger than people are giving it credit for. So yeah, 100%. All right, Rabbi, congratulations, you're out of here. I do not believe that you were here in good faith. I think you're full of shit, so you're out of here. Also, Rabbi, I fucked your mom. All right, everybody. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we're all struggling. I have a Patreon that you can join for as little as $1 a month. I have a store that you can buy things from off of my website. Links are in the bio. You can also send gifts and become super fans on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can give me a sub for free. It costs you nothing, and it gives me $2. Shout out to my patrons, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick, and shout out to my super fans on TikTok, Susie, Sean, Dan, and Hot Sauce. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to, or there are questions that come up when I am not streaming, do not be shy about reaching out. Brian, you are new here, and so that goes double for you. I am happy to answer questions when I'm not live streaming. In fact, I want to be a resource for all of you here. I want to help you be more informed. I want to help you be more involved. So if I can answer a question or point you to a great organization to either volunteer for or donate money to, I want to be that resource for you. So use me and abuse me. Use me until I am all used up. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. The schedule is regularly updated on my YouTube, sorry, not on my YouTube, on my Twitch, on my TikTok calendar, and on my personal performance calendar on my website. The Discord is one of my favorite resources because not only is it a great way to get in touch, but also you can meet other people who are part of this community, and there are great recommendations there for books, podcasts, and great organizations and work that you can do to try to help our current political moment get better. And I desperately hope that all of you out there will do the work, because without good people like you and me doing the work, then we're fucked. Then we continue this rapid decline into authoritarianism. Yeah, it's going to be a whole fucking thing, guys, if we do not get out there and do the work. All right, let's see here. Final questions. BB Fan says, how do we get you to add Phoenix to your schedule? before you wrap up prior to birth. So BB fan, the next tour that I'm on isn't until after the baby's born. It's going to be in December of 2026, so we're still over a year away. And we're doing the West Coast, and we're dipping a little bit into the New Mexico, Nevada area. So I believe Arizona is in that area as well. If you want me on a show there, I don't know if it's on the schedule right now. The schedule is a little bit loosey-goosey until we get closer to it. But yeah, it's possible that the furthest east that we are going is Albuquerque. I don't know where Phoenix is in relation to that. Yeah, that is that. Let's see here. I gotta block this spam bot person here. All right. These nuts are tasty. Says, I think one of the promises that Zoran made was to raise the minimum wage to $3 an hour. Do you feel that's possible? Also add free buses and freezing the rent while promising to build new houses. So I do think it is possible these nuts are tasty. Have you seen any of the reporting that if minimum wage was following things like productivity or inflation, that it would be closer to $30 an hour right now? I think that we are way too stingy with things like minimum wage and social safety net programs, and we are way too loosey-goosey with loopholes for the billionaire class able to not pay their taxes and shit like that. So it's definitely possible, and I do think that it would be a benefit when we give people who need money. They go out there and spend it, which makes the economy stronger, which makes businesses more profitable, so they can hire more people, et cetera, et cetera. When you give money to billionaires, they put it on a fucking island in the Caymans where they never pay taxes on it ever again. Ready. So yeah, so fucking pay people more money, free buses, freezing the rent, build new houses, and subsidize all of that by taxing the billionaire class. I'm on board. Politics is difficult. Will Mamdani be able to do all of this? Is an open question. I think that we should be supporting him, though. I think that we should be helping him accomplish these things as much as we can. You know, if you're not living in New York City, then I don't know if there's much you can do to help. But, you know, if you do, then if you are, then you should. You know? Okay. JP says, remember to mention that there's no cover charge, but there's a 1 drink minimum. What are you talking about, man? JP says no San Francisco or Sacramento shows. No, there most certainly will be. We're going to be mostly in California, JP. So hopefully you will be able to come out for one of those. Okay, Triska says Seattle or Portland. I don't think I'm going to be there on this run, unfortunately. So sorry, Triska. Okay, but again, that's over a year away, so we don't really know. Brian says there's a civil war within the Democratic Party, as Gavin Newsom states. I think civil war is a little hyperbolic. You know, the Democratic Party is a big tent party. And so we have our AOCs and we have our Chuck Schumerses. We have our Bernie Sanderses and we used to have our Joe Manchinses, but then he left. And I think that's kind of the way that it should be, you know, where people argue that if there were no Republicans, there wouldn't be anybody pushing back against the Democratic Party. I would say the Democratic Party pushes back against itself because, you know, we have a progressive wing and we have a centrist wing. You know, my personal political philosophy is that of a progressive Dem. So I would not be mad if the entire party was AOC's and Jasmine Crockett's and Chris Murphy's and Brian Schatz's. But it is possible, and pollsters will probably tell you this, you know, with more confidence than I, that having more centrist candidates in the party is beneficial, especially in down ballot races in purple and red states. So yeah, I don't think that the divisions and disagreements within the Democratic Party are a sign of a civil war. I think it is the sign that we are a diverse party and that there is strength in that if we can, you know, if we don't let the billionaire class use it to divide us so they can conquer us, if we don't let them weaponize that to tear us apart, it is a strength to have that diversity of opinion, diversity of culture, diversity of age, diversity of sex, of gender identity, of sexual identity, of religion. Like, that is what makes the Democratic Party strong, so long as we do not let other people convince us to let it tear us apart. All right, that sounds like the last thing I'm going to say today. Thank you, everybody, again, for being here. Do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.